Ogaga devised a plan. He traveled to a neighboring kingdom where a powerful and ambitious prince named Prince Iesi resided. Prince Iesi was known for his wealth and military prowess, and he had long sought to expand his influence by marrying into a royal family. Ogaga presented the situation to Prince Itse, emphasizing the potential benefits of marrying Princess Amara. He spoke of the king's desperation to break the curse and the reward that would come to the man who succeeded. Ogaga downplayed the severity of the curse, focusing instead on the wealth and power that would be gained. Prince Itse, intrigued by the opportunity, agreed to court the princess. He saw the marriage as a strategic move, one that would solidify his power and give him access to the resources of Umuoma. Confident in his abilities, he believed that he could find a way to break the curse or at least manage it well enough to claim his reward. With Ogaga's support, Prince Itse traveled to Umuoma, arriving at the palace with a grand entourage. His arrival was marked by fanfare and celebration, and the people of Umuoma, desperate for a solution to the curse, welcomed him with open arms. The king and queen, though wary of the prince's intentions, were willing to give him a chance. They had tried everything else, and if this prince could break the curse, then perhaps their daughter would finally find peace. Amara, however, was not pleased by the prince's arrival. She had heard of his reputation as a ruthless and power-hungry man, and she had no desire to be married off as part of a political alliance. Her heart was with Odibo, and the thought of being forced into a marriage with Prince Itse filled her with dread. The first meeting between Amara and Prince Itse was tense. The prince, confident and charming, tried to woo the princess with tales of his wealth and his exploits in battle. He showered her with lavish gifts, jewels, silks, and rare artifacts from distant lands. But Amara remained unmoved. She saw through his facade, recognizing his true intentions. As the days passed, Prince Itse grew increasingly frustrated with Amara's coldness. He couldn't understand why she resisted him, why she seemed so indifferent to his wealth and power. He had never encountered a woman who didn't fall for his charms, and the challenge only made him more determined to win her over. But no matter how hard he tried, Amara's heart remained with Odibo. She avoided the prince as much as she could, spending her days in the gardens with the herbalist, seeking solace in his company. One evening, as Amara sat with Odibo by the lily pond, she confided in him her fears about the prince. "Odibo, I cannot marry Prince Itse," she said, her voice trembling. "He doesn't care for me. He only wants the power that comes with marrying a princess. My heart belongs to you, but I fear my parents will force me to marry him for the sake of the kingdom." Odibo's heart ached at her words. He had known that their bond was strong, but he had never dared to hope that Amara's feelings for him were as deep as his feelings for her. He reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Amara," he said softly, "you are not a prize to be won, nor a tool for political gain. You are a person with your own heart and your own desires. I do not know what the future holds, but I promise you this: I will stand by your side, no matter what happens. We will face this together." Amara looked into Odibo's eyes, seeing the sincerity and love reflected in them. Her fear began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of resolve. She would not let the curse or the prince dictate her future. She would fight for her happiness, even if it meant defying the expectations placed upon her. As the night grew darker, the tension between Amara and the prince reached its peak. Chief Ogaga, seeing that the princess was resisting the match, began to pressure the king to take action. He argued that the kingdom needed the alliance with Prince Itse, that it was the only way to secure Amara's future and protect the kingdom from the growing threat of neighboring enemies. The king, torn between his duty to the kingdom and his love for his daughter, struggled to make a decision. He knew that forcing Amara into a marriage she didn't want would only bring her more pain, but he also knew that the kingdom was in a precarious position. The curse had already caused unrest among the people, and the threat of war loomed on the horizon. Queen Ejiro, seeing her husband's turmoil, took matters into her own hands. She sought out Amara in her chambers and asked her daughter to speak her heart. "Amara, my dear," the queen said, her voice filled with concern, "I know this is a difficult time for you, but you must tell me the truth. Do you love Odibo?" Amara hesitated for a moment, but then she nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Yes, mother. I love him with all my heart. He is the only one who has ever seen me for who I truly am, beyond the curse. I cannot marry Prince Itse, not when my heart belongs to someone else." The queen sighed, her heart heavy with the weight of the situation. "I will speak to your father," she said gently. "We will find a way to protect you, Amara, but you must be prepared for the challenges ahead. Ogaga is determined to see this marriage happen, and he will not give up easily." Amara nodded, her resolve strengthening. "I will fight for my happiness, mother. I will not let the curse or the prince control my life." As the pressure mounted for Amara to marry Prince Itse, Odibo continued his work with the princess, helping her find peace within herself. They spent hours together in the gardens, meditating, practicing breathing exercises, and focusing on positive emotions that could weaken the curse. But despite their efforts, the curse seemed to grow stronger, as if it sensed the looming threat of the prince's arrival. The scent that clung to Amara became more potent, more oppressive, and even Odibo struggled to remain unaffected by it. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Odibo noticed a strange pattern among the herbs they had gathered. He had been studying the plants for weeks, trying to understand the connection between the curse and Amara's emotions. But now, he saw something that he had missed before. "Amara," Odibo said, his voice filled with curiosity, "I believe there is more to this curse than we first thought. These herbs, each one is associated with different emotions and energies. I wonder if the curse is tied to your emotions in a way we haven't considered." Amara looked at him with a mixture of hope and confusion. "What do you mean, Odibo?" Odibo explained his theory, that the curse was not just a physical manifestation, but something deeply connected to Amara's emotional state. He believed that the curse fed on her fear, her despair, and her sense of isolation, growing stronger as those emotions became more intense. "But if that's true," Amara said, her voice trembling, "then how do we weaken it?" Odibo looked at her with gentle determination. "We weaken it by focusing on positive emotions, love, acceptance, and self-worth. The more you embrace these feelings, the less power the curse will have over you." Amara listened, her heart racing. Could it really be that simple? Could the curse be something she had the power to control? Odibo's theory gave Amara a new sense of purpose. She began to focus on nurturing positive emotions, on finding joy in the small things, and on building her self-worth. It wasn't easy. Years of isolation and rejection had taken their toll, but with Odibo's support, she began to see small changes. The scent of the curse began to diminish, growing weaker as Amara grew stronger. The palace staff, once distant and wary, began to warm to the princess, noticing the change in her demeanor and the fading of the curse's scent. But the road to breaking the curse was not a straight one. There were setbacks, moments when the curse would flare up, overwhelming Amara with its intensity. These moments often came when she felt the pressure to marry Prince Itse, the fear of losing Odibo, or the uncertainty of her future. Odibo remained by her side through it all, offering words of comfort and encouragement. He reminded her that the path to healing was not a linear one, that there would be ups and downs, but that she was stronger than the curse. His presence became a source of strength for Amara, a beacon of hope in the midst of her struggles. One day, as they sat together in the garden, Amara confided in Odibo her deepest fear. What if I can't break the curse, Odibo? What if it's too strong, and I'm doomed to live with it forever? Odibo took her hand, his touch reassuring. The curse may be strong, Amara, but so are you. You have already come so far, and you are not alone in this. We will find a way, together. Amara looked into his eyes, seeing the love and determination reflected in them. Thank you, Odibo. I don't know what I would do without you. Odibo smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. You will never have to find out, Princess. I am here for you, always. As they continued to work together, Odibo's feelings for Amara deepened. He had always admired her strength and resilience, but now he found himself falling in love with her. He cherished the moments they spent together, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her hopes and dreams, the way her laughter filled the air with joy. But Odibo knew that their love would not be easily accepted. He was a common herbalist, a man with no wealth or status, and she was a princess, destined for a life of privilege and power. The thought of losing her to Prince Itse filled him with dread, but he knew that he could not stand in the way of her happiness. As the day of Amara's decision approached, the tension in the palace grew. The king and queen were caught between their love for their daughter and their duty to the kingdom. Ogaga continued to pressure them, insisting that the marriage to Prince Iesi was the only way to secure Amara's future and protect the kingdom. The people of Umuoma too were divided. Some supported the marriage, believing that it would bring stability and prosperity. Others sympathized with the princess, knowing that her heart was with the humble herbalist who had brought her so much comfort. Amara herself felt torn between her love for Odibo and her duty to her family and her people. She knew that marrying Prince Itse would secure the future of the kingdom, but it would also mean giving up the love she had found with Odibo. In the days leading up to her decision, Amara's emotions were a whirlwind of fear, hope, and determination. The curse, sensing her inner turmoil, began to flare up, making the scent stronger and more overwhelming than ever before. It was as if the curse was fighting to hold on, knowing that its grip on Amara was weakening. But with Odibo's support, Amara found the strength to keep going. She focused on the positive emotions they had cultivated together: love, acceptance, and the belief that she was more than the curse that had defined her life for so long. On the night before her decision, Amara and Odibo sat together in the garden, the air thick with the scent of flowers and the faint remnants of the curse. The stars shone brightly overhead, casting a soft light over the palace grounds. Tomorrow, everything will change, Amara said softly, her voice filled with both hope and fear. Odibo nodded, his expression serious, but filled with love. No matter what happens, Amara, know that I am with you. We have come this far together, and we will face whatever comes next, together. Amara leaned into his embrace, finding comfort in his steady presence. Thank you, Odibo. You have given me hope when I thought all hope was lost. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I can face it with you by my side. As they sat there, wrapped in each other's warmth, the curse seemed to lose its power, the scent fading into the night air. Amara closed her eyes, allowing herself to believe that they could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. But deep down, she knew that the real test was yet to come. The decision she would make the next day would determine not only her future, but the future of the entire kingdom. And as much as she wished to follow her heart, she knew that the weight of her duty to her people would not be easily ignored. The night passed slowly, each hour bringing her closer to the moment of truth. And though fear still lingered in the corners of her mind, Amara knew that she had the strength to face whatever lay ahead, as long as Odibo was by her side. The day of Amara's decision arrived, and the atmosphere in the palace was thick with tension. Everyone knew that whatever choice she made would shape the future of Umuoma. The king had called for a council meeting, gathering his advisors, including Chief Ogaga, Queen Ejiro, and Prince Itse, to discuss the matter. The weight of the kingdom's future rested on this meeting. Amara was summoned to the council chamber, her heart pounding with each step she took. She could feel the eyes of the palace staff on her as she walked through the corridors, their whispers following her like shadows. She knew they were all waiting, hoping, fearing what her choice would be. When she entered the chamber, silence fell. The king sat at the head of the table, his expression grave but compassionate. The queen sat beside him, her face lined with worry. Prince Itse stood near the window, his posture tense, his eyes fixed on Amara. Chief Ogaga watched her closely, his expression unreadable. "Amara," the king began, his voice steady but gentle. "You know why we have called you here. The time has come for you to make a decision. Will you marry Prince Itse and secure the future of our kingdom, or will you choose another path?" Amara took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them in front of her. She looked at her father, then at her mother, and finally at Prince Itse. The prince's gaze was intense, filled with expectation and a hint of impatience. But Amara's heart was not moved by his wealth, power, or charm. She glanced at Odibo, who stood quietly at the back of the room, his presence a source of strength for her. He had promised to stand by her, no matter what, and she knew he meant it. Her love for him was strong, but so was her sense of duty to her people. "I cannot marry Prince Itse," Amara said finally, her voice trembling but resolute. "My heart belongs to another." A stunned silence fell over the room. The king's expression tightened with concern, while the queen's eyes filled with a mixture of pride and worry. Chief Ogaga's face twisted with anger. "This is madness," he exclaimed. "How can you throw away your future, the future of this kingdom, for a common herbalist? You are a princess, Amara. Your duty is to your people, not your heart." Amara turned to Ogaga, her eyes blazing with determination. "I am not just a princess, Ogaga. I am a person with my own heart, my own desires. I will not sacrifice my happiness for political gain. I will not marry Prince Itse, and that is my final decision." Prince Itse stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. "You will regret this decision, Amara," he hissed. "You think you can defy me, defy the will of your father and your people? I will not be humiliated by a woman like you." Before the king could respond, Odibo stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Enough," he said, his words cutting through the tension in the room. "Amara has made her decision, and it is one of love and courage. You will not force her into a marriage she does not want. I will stand by her, no matter what." The king looked at Odibo, his expression one of surprise mixed with a grudging respect. He could see the love and determination in the herbalist's eyes, and he knew that this was no ordinary man. Odibo was willing to risk everything for Amara, and that was something the king could not ignore. "Very well," the king said after a long pause, his voice calm but firm. "Amara has made her choice, and I will respect it. She will not marry Prince Itse. The council is dismissed." Chief Ogaga sputtered in disbelief, but the king's decision was final. Prince Itse, seething with anger, stormed out of the chamber, his entourage trailing behind him. Ogaga glared at Odibo as he left, his eyes filled with hatred and something darker, vengeance. As the chamber emptied, Amara felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had made her choice, and it was one that she knew was right. She turned to Odibo, her eyes filled with gratitude and love. "Thank you, Odibo," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." Odibo smiled, taking her hands in his. "You are stronger than you know, Amara. I am honored to stand by your side." The king and queen approached their daughter, their faces filled with a mix of pride, concern, and a hint of sadness. "Amara," the queen said gently, "we are proud of you for standing up for what you believe in, but you must be prepared for the challenges ahead. Ogaga will not give up easily, and neither will Prince Itse." "I know, mother," Amara replied, her voice steadying as she gathered her resolve. "But I will face whatever comes with Odibo by my side." The king placed a hand on Odibo's shoulder, his expression serious. "You have shown great courage, Odibo. I can see that your love for Amara is true, but you must understand that this will not be easy. The curse still hangs over us, and there are those who will try to tear you apart." "I understand, Your Majesty," Odibo replied, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But I am willing to face whatever comes. My love for Amara is stronger than any curse." As they left the chamber, Amara felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead would not be easy, but she had made her choice. A choice for love, a choice for herself. And with Odibo by her side, she knew she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as they walked through the palace corridors, the shadows seemed to grow longer, darker. There were forces at work that Amara couldn't see, forces that would soon test the strength of her love and the bond she shared with Odibo. The days following Amara's decision were filled with a tense calm, like the stillness before a storm. The palace was abuzz with whispers and speculation, the servants unsure of what the future held. Chief Ogaga's fury was palpable, and it was clear that he would not rest until he had found a way to undermine Amara's choice. Prince Itse had retreated to his kingdom, but everyone knew that his pride had been wounded, and a wounded pride often led to dangerous actions. Amara tried to focus on the positives. The curse's scent had weakened significantly since she made her choice, and Odibo's constant presence brought her comfort and strength. The palace staff, who had once avoided her, now treated her with a newfound respect, even admiration. It seemed that her decision to follow her heart had inspired many in the kingdom, but not everyone was happy. Ogaga, fueled by anger and a desire for power, began to conspire with those who opposed Amara's decision. He knew that he needed to act quickly if he wanted to prevent Amara and Odibo from being together. His influence over the king was strong, but he knew that open defiance would not work. Instead, he chose a subtler path, one that would test the strength of Amara's love and the bond she shared with Odibo. Meanwhile, Odibo and Amara grew closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. They spent their days in the palace gardens, talking, laughing, and planning for a future they hoped would be filled with love and happiness. The curse, which had once defined Amara's life, seemed to be losing its grip. The scent that had clung to her for so long was now barely noticeable, a faint reminder of a past that she was slowly leaving behind. But just as they began to dream of a future together, the first sign of trouble appeared. It started with a rumor, whispered among the servants, and spreading quickly throughout the palace. It was said that Prince Itse was preparing for war, that he could not accept the humiliation of being rejected by Amara, and would soon march on Umuoma with his army. At first, Amara dismissed the rumors as mere gossip, but as the days passed, the rumors grew louder and more persistent. The king received reports from his spies, confirming that Prince Itse was indeed gathering his forces. The threat of war hung over the kingdom like a dark cloud, and the once peaceful palace was now filled with fear and uncertainty. The king, deeply troubled by the news, called for a meeting with his advisors, including Ogaga. The council debated the best course of action, with some arguing for diplomacy and others urging the king to prepare for battle. Ogaga, however, saw the threat of war as an opportunity to drive a wedge between Amara and Odibo. "Your Majesty," Ogaga began, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of urgency, "the kingdom is in grave danger. Prince Itse's forces are strong, and if he attacks, we may not be able to defend ourselves. but there is still a way to avoid war. The king looked at Ogaga, his face lined with worry. What do you suggest, Ogaga? Ogaga's eyes gleamed with cunning. We must convince Amara to reconsider her decision. If she agrees to marry Prince Itse, we can secure peace for the kingdom and avoid a devastating war. I believe that with the right persuasion, she will see that her duty to her people must come before her personal desires. The king hesitated, torn between his love for his daughter and his responsibility to his kingdom. He knew that Amara's decision had brought her happiness, but he could not ignore the threat that loomed over them all. Queen Ejiro, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Odor, our daughter has already made her choice. Forcing her to marry against her will could break her spirit. There must be another way to avoid war. Ogaga's expression darkened, but he quickly masked it with a look of concern. Your Majesty, I understand the Queen's sentiments, but we must think of the greater good. The safety of the kingdom must come first. The king sighed, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on him. I will speak to Amara, he said finally, but I will not force her to do anything against her will. We will find another way to protect the kingdom if she refuses. That evening, the king summoned Amara to his chambers. The weight of the day's discussions hung heavily in the air, and Amara could see the worry etched into her father's face as she entered. Amara, the king began, his voice filled with a mix of love and concern. We are facing a great challenge. Prince Itse is preparing for war, and our kingdom is in danger. Ogaga believes that if you reconsider your decision and agree to marry Prince Itse, we can avoid this conflict and protect our people. Amara's heart sank at her father's words. She had feared that this day would come, that the pressure to choose duty over love would be too great to withstand. But she also knew that she could not betray her heart. Father, I understand the gravity of the situation, Amara replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. But my decision remains the same. I cannot marry Prince Itse. My heart belongs to Odibo, and I believe that love, true love, can overcome even the greatest challenges. The king looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. I know, my dear, and I am proud of your strength and courage. But as your father, I worry for you and for our people. If war comes, it will not just be our kingdom that suffers, but the lives of all who call it home. Amara's eyes filled with tears, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. I do not want to bring harm to our people, father, but I also know that marrying Prince Itse will not bring peace. He does not care for me, and a marriage built on such foundations would only lead to more suffering. The king reached out, gently placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. You are wise beyond your years, Amara. We will find another way to protect the kingdom. I will not force you to marry against your will, but know that whatever path we choose, it will be fraught with challenges. Amara nodded, her heart swelling with love for her father. Thank you, father. I will do everything in my power to help protect our kingdom, but I cannot sacrifice my happiness or my love for Odibo. As she left her father's chambers, Amara felt a renewed sense of resolve. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she was determined to face it with courage and love. She returned to the gardens where Odibo was waiting, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm that surrounded them. I spoke with my father, Amara said, her voice tinged with both relief and determination. He understands my decision, but the threat of war is real. We must be prepared for whatever comes next. Odibo nodded, his expression serious but filled with love. We will face it together, Amara. No matter what happens, we will stand strong, and we will protect each other and our kingdom. But as they embraced, a shadow fell over the palace. Chief Ogaga, watching from the shadows, knew that he would need to take more drastic measures if he wanted to separate Amara and Odibo. He would stop at nothing to see his plans succeed, even if it meant plunging the kingdom into chaos. The battle for love was far from over, and the true test of Amara and Odibo's bond was yet to come. The palace of Umuoma was no longer a place of peace and serenity. With the looming threat of Prince Itse's attack, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The servants went about their duties in hushed tones, the soldiers trained harder, and the once vibrant gardens seemed muted under the weight of the kingdom's worries. Amara and Odibo spent every moment they could together, drawing strength from each other. But even in their quiet moments, the shadow of war loomed large. Amara's resolve had not wavered, but she could feel the pressure mounting from all sides. Ogaga's influence in the court was growing, and she knew that he would stop at nothing to see her separated from Odibo. One evening, as Amara and Odibo sat by the lily pond, a messenger arrived with a letter from Prince Iesi. The prince, angered by Amara's rejection and humiliated by the events at the palace, had issued an ultimatum. Either Amara would agree to marry him, or he would march his army to the gates of Umuoma within the week. Amara's hands trembled as she read the letter, her heart sinking with every word. She knew that Itse was not bluffing. His pride had been wounded, and he was determined to make the kingdom pay for his humiliation. Odibo, seeing the distress on Amara's face, gently took the letter from her and read it. His expression hardened as he realized the gravity of the situation. "This is not just about you, Amara," he said softly. "Itse is willing to destroy the entire kingdom to satisfy his pride. We must be prepared for anything." Amara nodded, her resolve strengthening despite the fear gnawing at her heart. "We will not give in to his demands, Odibo. I will not be forced into a marriage with a man who seeks to use me as a pawn in his quest for power. But I also will not let my people suffer because of his pride. We must find a way to protect Umuoma." The king, upon hearing of the ultimatum, immediately called for an emergency council meeting. The advisors, generals, and key figures of the court gathered in the grand hall, the weight of the decision before them evident in the tense atmosphere. Ogaga, who had been biding his time, saw this as his moment. He stood before the council, his voice calm but laced with urgency. "Your Majesty, the time for indecision has passed. Prince Itse's forces are strong, and we cannot hope to defend ourselves against them without great loss. The princess's refusal to marry him has brought us to this brink. We must act now to protect the kingdom." The king, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "Ogaga, we will not be rushed into a decision that could cost us more than we are willing to pay. My daughter has made her choice, and I will not force her into a marriage she does not want." Ogaga's eyes flashed with anger, but he kept his tone measured. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is not just about the princess's happiness. It is about the survival of our kingdom. If we do not take action, ETS will bring war to our gates. Do we truly want to risk the lives of our people for the sake of one marriage?" The room fell silent as the council members considered Ogaga's words. The tension was palpable, and Amara could feel the eyes of the entire room on her. She knew that many of them were torn, understanding her position, but also fearing the consequences of defying ITC. Queen Ejiro, who had been sitting quietly beside the king, finally spoke. "Ogaga, you speak of survival. But what kind of kingdom would we be if we sacrificed our own children for the sake of peace? A marriage built on coercion and fear will not bring true stability. We must find another way." Ogaga, sensing that he was losing ground, decided to play his final card. "Your Majesty, Queen Ejiro, council members," he began, his voice taking on a more sinister tone. "There is another way. A way to ensure that the princess's love for this herbalist is truly genuine and not just the product of desperation or fear." The room went still as Ogaga's words hung in the air. Amara's heart began to race, a sense of foreboding washing over her. Ogaga continued, his eyes locked on Amara. We must test the princess's love. If she truly loves Odibo, she will be willing to prove it. I propose that we send the herbalist away, far from the palace, far from the princess. If their love is strong, it will endure. If not, we will have our answer, and the kingdom will have a clear path forward. Amara's blood ran cold at Ogaga's suggestion. She knew that this was not a test of love, but a thinly veiled attempt to separate her from Odibo and force her into marrying Itse. She could see the satisfaction in Ogaga's eyes, the way he relished the power he held in this moment. The king looked at Ogaga with a mixture of disbelief and anger. You would suggest such a cruel test, Ogaga? This is not a game. These are people's lives we are talking about. Ogaga bowed his head slightly, his expression one of feigned humility. I understand, Your Majesty, but in times of great crisis, we must take difficult measures to ensure the best outcome for all. If the princess's love is true, it will survive this test. And if it does not, then we will have the clarity we need to protect the kingdom. The room was silent, the council members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. They knew that Ogaga's proposal was a calculated move, but they also knew that they were running out of options. Amara stood up, her voice trembling but filled with determination. No, I will not allow this test to take place. My love for Odibo does not need to be proven to anyone. This is nothing more than an attempt to separate us and force me into a marriage I do not want. Ogaga's eyes narrowed, but he kept his expression neutral. Princess, if your love is true, then what do you have to fear? This test will only confirm what you already know in your heart. The king, seeing the pain and anger in his daughter's eyes, finally made his decision. Ogaga, this test will not take place. My daughter has spoken, and I will not allow this kingdom to be ruled by fear and manipulation. We will find another way to protect our people. Ogaga's expression darkened, but he nodded, bowing slightly. As you wish, Your Majesty. But remember, time is running out. Prince Itse's forces are on the move, and we must be prepared for the consequences of our actions. As the council meeting adjourned, Amara felt a wave of relief wash over her. But she knew that this was only a temporary reprieve. Ogaga would not give up so easily, and the threat of war still loomed over the kingdom. That night, as Amara and Odibo sat together in the gardens, they spoke of the future, of the challenges they would face, and the strength they would need to overcome them. We cannot let Ogaga's schemes tear us apart, Amara said, her voice filled with determination. Our love is stronger than any test he could devise. Odibo nodded, his hand gently caressing hers. We will face whatever comes together, Amara. We have already come this far, and we will not be defeated by the likes of Ogaga. But as they embraced, the shadows seemed to grow longer, and the sense of foreboding that had lingered over the palace grew stronger. They both knew that the breaking point was near, and that they would need all the strength and love they had to survive what was to come. The true test of their love was yet to come, and it would not be a test of distance or time, but of their very will to fight for what they believed in. The next morning, the first signs of war appeared on the horizon. Scouts reported that Prince Itse's army had begun its march towards Umuoma, moving swiftly across the plains that separated the two kingdoms. The people of Umuoma, who had lived in peace for so long, now faced the terrifying prospect of invasion. The king immediately ordered the palace to be fortified, and the soldiers of Umuoma prepared for battle. The mood in the palace was grim as the reality of the situation set in. For all their bravery and determination, the forces of Umuoma were outnumbered and outmatched by Itse's well-trained army. Amara, who had always been sheltered from the harsh realities of war, now found herself at the center of it. She could see the fear in the eyes of the palace staff, the tension in the air as soldiers prepared for the coming battle. She knew that this war was a direct result of her refusal to marry Prince Itse, and the guilt weighed heavily on her heart. But Odibo, ever the voice of reason and strength, refused to let her fall into despair. "This is not your fault, Amara," he said gently as they stood together on the palace walls, watching the horizon. "Prince Itse is the one who has chosen to bring war to our kingdom, not you. Your decision to follow your heart is not to blame." Amara looked at Odibo, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. "But how can I not feel responsible, Odibo? So many lives are at stake because of me. If I had just agreed to marry him, none of this would be happening." Odibo shook his head, his expression firm. "You cannot sacrifice your happiness and your future for the sake of appeasing a tyrant. Prince Itse would have found another reason to wage war, even if you had married him. His thirst for power knows no bounds. This is a test, Amara, a test of our love, our strength, and our resolve. We will face it together, and we will emerge stronger." As the sun set, casting long shadows over the palace, the people of Umuoma prepared for the inevitable. The soldiers donned their armor, sharpened their weapons, and readied themselves for battle. The women of the palace, led by Queen Ejiro, gathered supplies, food, and water, preparing to care for the wounded. The tension was palpable, the fear of what was to come hanging over them like a dark cloud. That night, Amara found it difficult to sleep. The sounds of the soldiers preparing for battle echoed through the palace, a constant reminder of the danger that loomed. She lay awake, her mind racing with thoughts of the coming battle, of the lives that would be lost, and of the uncertain future that awaited them all. In the early hours of the morning, just before dawn, the first sounds of the enemy's approach reached the palace. The ground trembled under the march of thousands of feet, and the distant clatter of armor and weapons filled the air. Prince Itse's army had arrived. The king called for a final council meeting, gathering his generals, advisors, and key figures in the palace to discuss their strategy. Amara and Odibo were also present, their faces set with determination. "We have no choice but to defend our kingdom," the king said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We will hold the palace walls and protect our people for as long as we can, but we must be prepared for the worst. If the palace falls, we must ensure that the royal family and the people are evacuated safely." Queen Ejiro nodded, her expression resolute. "We have prepared the tunnels beneath the palace for evacuation. The women and children will be taken there if the walls are breached." Ogaga, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. "Your Majesty, we must also consider the possibility of negotiation. If we can reach an agreement with Prince Itse, perhaps we can avoid the bloodshed that is sure to come." The king looked at Ogaga, his expression one of disbelief. "You would suggest negotiation now, after everything that has happened? Prince Itse has made it clear that he seeks only to conquer, not to negotiate. We will not surrender our kingdom to him." Ogaga's eyes narrowed, but he kept his voice calm. "I only suggest that we explore all options, Your Majesty. If there is a way to avoid unnecessary loss of life, we must consider it." Amara, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "Father, we cannot trust Prince Itse. He has shown his true colors. He will not stop until he has what he wants, and what he wants is power. We must defend our kingdom with all that we have." The king nodded, his expression grim. "You are right, Amara. We will stand our ground. Prepare the defenses and ready the soldiers. The battle for Umuoma begins now." As the council dispersed, Amara and Odibo took a moment to themselves in the quiet of the palace gardens. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden light over the flowers and trees. It was a moment of calm before the storm, a brief respite before the chaos of battle. "I am afraid, Odibo," Amara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am afraid of what will happen, of what we might lose." Odibo took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "It is okay to be afraid, Amara, but remember, fear does not control us. It guides us, sharpens our instincts, and strengthens our resolve. We will face this together, and no matter what happens, our love will endure." As the first sounds of battle echoed in the distance, Amara felt a surge of determination rise within her. She would not let fear control her. She would fight for her kingdom, for her people, and for the love she had found with Odibo. Together, they would face whatever came their way, and they would not be defeated. The battle began in earnest as Prince Itse's forces launched their assault on the palace walls. The soldiers of Umuoma, though outnumbered, fought with fierce determination, driven by their loyalty to the king and the princess. The clash of swords, the cries of battle, and the roar of war filled the air as the two armies met in a brutal struggle for control. Amara, dressed in simple armor, stood on the walls with Odibo by her side. She watched as the soldiers fought to defend their home, her heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. She knew that this was more than just a battle for the kingdom. It was a battle for her future, for the love she had found, and for the life she had chosen. Odibo, though not a warrior by trade, fought with the strength and determination of a man who had everything to lose. He stayed close to Amara, protecting her from any enemy that dared to approach. His love for her fueled his every move, giving him the courage to face the horrors of war. As the battle raged on, it became clear that Prince Itse's forces were gaining the upper hand. The soldiers of Umuoma were strong, but they were outnumbered, and the enemy was relentless. The walls of the palace, once thought to be impenetrable, began to show signs of wear as the enemy's siege weapons battered them relentlessly. Despite the overwhelming odds, Amara refused to give up. She rallied the soldiers around her, her presence on the battlefield a source of inspiration and strength. She knew that this was not just a battle for the kingdom, it was a battle for her very soul. As the day wore on, the tide of battle began to shift. The soldiers of Umuoma, inspired by their princess's bravery, fought with renewed vigor. They pushed back against the enemy, driving them away from the palace walls and reclaiming lost ground. But the victory was short-lived. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the battlefield, Prince Itse himself appeared at the front lines. His presence alone sent a wave of fear through the ranks of the Umuoma soldiers. Itse was a warrior of unparalleled skill, and his arrival signaled a turning point in the battle. With a roar, Itse led his forces in a renewed assault on the palace walls. The soldiers of Umuoma, exhausted from the day's fighting, struggled to hold their ground. The walls, weakened from the constant bombardment, began to crack and crumble under the relentless attack. Amara watched in horror as the enemy forces breached the walls, pouring into the palace grounds. The battle had reached its breaking point, and the fate of the kingdom hung in the balance. In the chaos of battle, Amara and Odibo found themselves separated from the main force of soldiers. They were surrounded by enemy troops, the sound of clashing swords and the cries of the wounded filling the air. Amara fought with all her might, her heart pounding with fear and determination. She knew that this was the moment that would define her future, the moment that would determine whether she would stand or fall. Odibo, seeing the danger Amara was in, fought his way through the enemy lines to reach her. But as he approached, he was confronted by none other than Prince Itse himself. Iesi, his face twisted with rage, recognized Odibo as the man who had taken Amara's heart. With a snarl, he drew his sword and advanced on the Herbalist, his intent clear. He would eliminate Odibo and take Amara for himself. Amara, seeing Itse's approach, felt a surge of fear and anger. She could not let Itse harm the man she loved. With a cry, she charged at the prince, her sword raised high. Itse, taken aback by Amara's sudden attack, barely had time to defend himself. The two clashed in a fierce battle, their swords ringing out as they struck and parried. Itse was a skilled fighter, his movements swift and deadly. But Amara fought with the strength of her love for Odibo and her determination to protect her kingdom. The battle between Amara and Itse was intense, each strike filled with the weight of their conflicting desires. Itse fought with the arrogance of a man who believed he was entitled to whatever he wanted, while Amara fought with the fierce determination of a woman who had chosen her own path and would not be controlled by anyone. As the battle raged on, Amara began to gain the upper hand. She could see the anger and frustration in Itse's eyes as he struggled to keep up with her relentless attacks. She knew that this was her moment, the moment that would decide the fate of the kingdom and her future. With a final powerful strike, Amara disarmed Itse, sending his sword flying from his hand. Itse fell to his knees, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. He had never expected to be defeated by a princess, a woman he had underestimated and scorned. Amara stood over him, her sword pointed at his throat. "Yield, Itse," she commanded, her voice firm and unyielding. "Your fight is over." Itse, seeing the determination in Amara's eyes, knew that he had lost. He had underestimated her, thinking her weak because of the curse, but she had proven herself stronger than he could have imagined. With a growl of frustration, he bowed his head in defeat. "I yield," Itse spat, his voice filled with bitterness. "You have won, princess." Amara stepped back, lowering her sword as the soldiers of Umuoma surrounded the defeated prince. The battle was over, and the people of Umuoma had won. The enemy forces, seeing their leader defeated, surrendered, and the city was saved. As the sun set over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the land, Amara and Odibo embraced, their love stronger than ever. They had faced the curse, the battle, and the challenges that had come their way, and they had emerged victorious. The people of Umuoma celebrated their victory, their hearts filled with pride for their princess and the humble herbalist who had stood by her side. The curse that had once cast a shadow over Amara's life was now a distant memory, and the future that had seemed so uncertain was now filled with hope. But as they celebrated, Amara knew that the true victory was not just in the defeat of Prince Itse, but in the strength and love she had found within herself and in Odibo. Together, they had overcome the curse, the battle, and the challenges that had tried to tear them apart. And together, they would build a future filled with love, hope, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The battle was over, but the aftermath of war left the kingdom of Umuoma forever changed. The once vibrant palace now bore the scars of the siege, crumbling walls, shattered gates, and the lingering smell of smoke in the air. The people, though victorious, moved with a somber energy, mourning the lives lost in the fight to protect their home. In the days that followed, the palace grounds became a place of healing and reflection. The wounded were tended to by the palace healers, the fallen were honored with solemn ceremonies, and the citizens of Umuoma began the long process of rebuilding their kingdom. Despite the pain and loss, there was a sense of hope that pervaded the air, a hope born from the knowledge that they had faced a great challenge and emerged stronger. Amara and Odibo spent much of their time helping with the recovery efforts. Amara, no longer burdened by the curse, found a new sense of purpose in serving her people. She moved among them, offering words of comfort and encouragement, her presence a beacon of hope in a time of sorrow. The people who had once whispered about the cursed princess now looked upon her with admiration and respect. Odibo, too, found himself embraced by the people of Umuoma. His role in the battle had not gone unnoticed, and many praised him for his bravery and steadfastness. But Odibo remained humble. insisting that he had only done what was necessary to protect the woman he loved and the kingdom he had come to care for. As the days turned into weeks, the kingdom slowly began to heal. The walls were rebuilt, the gardens replanted, and the people began to smile again. There was still much work to be done, but the spirit of Umuoma was unbroken. One morning, as the first rays of the sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the palace, the king summoned Amara and Odibo to his chambers. The couple, hand in hand, walked through the familiar corridors, their hearts filled with a sense of anticipation. When they entered the king's chambers, they found both the king and queen waiting for them. The king's expression was one of quiet pride, while the queen's eyes shone with warmth and love. "Amara, Odibo," the king began, his voice filled with emotion. "You have both shown great courage and strength in the face of overwhelming adversity. You have proven that love and determination can overcome even the greatest challenges. For that, I am proud of you both." Amara smiled, her heart swelling with love for her father. "Thank you, father. But we did not do this alone. The people of Umuoma stood with us, and it is their strength and resilience that has brought us through this trial." The queen stepped forward, taking Amara's hands in her own. "You have grown into a remarkable woman, my daughter. You have shown that true strength comes from within, from the love and compassion you hold in your heart." And Odibo, she turned to the herbalist with a smile. "You have been a steadfast companion and protector. You have shown that love is not just a feeling, but a force that can change the world." Odibo bowed his head, his voice humble. "Your Majesties, I am honored to have been able to stand by Amara's side. She has taught me more about strength and love than I ever thought possible. It is I who am grateful." The king exchanged a look with the queen before turning back to Amara and Odibo. "It is clear to us that your love is true and strong. Therefore, we give you our blessing to be together, to build a life of happiness and love. The kingdom of Umuoma will always stand by you, as you have stood by each other." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she looked at her parents. This was the moment she had longed for, the moment when her love for Odibo was recognized and celebrated. She turned to Odibo, her heart overflowing with joy. "We have come so far together, Odibo. Now we can finally begin the life we have dreamed of." Odibo smiled, his eyes filled with love for Amara. "Yes, Amara, this is just the beginning of our journey. Together, we will face whatever the future holds." With the king and queen's blessing, the preparations for Amara and Odibo's wedding began. The palace, once a place of battle and sorrow, was transformed into a place of celebration and joy. The people of Umuoma, who had stood by their princess and the humble herbalist, now celebrated their union with heartfelt enthusiasm. The wedding was a grand affair, filled with music, dancing, and laughter. The palace gardens, now fully restored, bloomed with vibrant flowers, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of roses and jasmine. The people of Umuoma, dressed in their finest clothes, gathered to witness the union of their beloved princess and the man who had stood by her through it all. As Amara walked down the aisle, dressed in a flowing gown of white and gold, her heart swelled with love and gratitude. She had faced so many challenges, overcome so many obstacles, but now, at last, she was free to embrace the love she had fought so hard to protect. Odibo, standing at the altar, felt his heart race as he watched Amara approach. She was more than a princess to him. She was his partner, his equal, the woman who had shown him the true meaning of love. As she reached his side, he took her hand, his heart filled with a profound sense of joy and contentment. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows and promises of love and devotion. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the palace, Amara and Odibo exchanged rings, sealing their bond with a kiss that was met with cheers and applause from the gathered crowd. The celebration that followed was one of pure joy. The people of Umuoma danced and sang late into the night, their hearts light with happiness. The kingdom, once shadowed by the curse and the threat of war, now basked in the glow of love and unity. As the night wore on, Amara and Odibo stole away to the quiet of the palace gardens. The stars twinkled above them, and the soft breeze carried the scent of flowers through the air. They sat together by the lily pond, the place where their love had first blossomed. "Do you remember the first time we sat here?" Amara asked, her voice soft and filled with nostalgia. Odibo nodded, his hand gently caressing hers. "I remember. You were so full of hope, even though the curse weighed heavily on your heart. And now, look at us. We have come so far, and our love has only grown stronger." Amara smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "I never thought I could be this happy, Odibo. You have given me so much, love, strength, and the courage to be true to myself. I am so grateful to have you by my side." "And I am grateful for you, Amara," Odibo replied, his voice filled with emotion. "You have shown me that love is the greatest strength of all. Together, we have faced the darkest of days and emerged into the light. I will always stand by you, no matter what." As they sat together, the sounds of celebration echoing softly in the distance, Amara and Odibo knew that they were ready for whatever the future held. The curse that had once defined Amara's life was now a distant memory, a shadow that had been banished by the light of their love. The kingdom of Umuoma, once burdened by fear and uncertainty, now looked to the future with hope and optimism. Amara and Odibo's love had not only brought them happiness, but it had also united the kingdom, bringing the people together in a way that had never been seen before. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Amara and Odibo stood together, hand in hand, looking out over the kingdom they had fought so hard to protect. The future was theirs to build, and they knew that with love, anything was possible. And so, as a new day dawned, the people of Umuoma celebrated not just the end of a curse or the victory of a battle, but the beginning of a new era, one defined by love, hope, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.